Welcome to Research Talk. In our previous video, we talked about Giorgi's descriptive phenomenology. In this video, we are going to study another phenomenological methodology, which is Max van Manen's interpretive approach to phenomenology or hermeneutic approach. So let's begin. So as other phenomenological traditions, the focus of Max van Manen's approach is also on understanding lived experiences. Another thing that Manen's phenomenology focuses on is explicating the phenomenon as it appears. So again, explicating, the word explicating, meaning that Manen's approach is more focused on understanding the meanings, interpretations of the phenomenon. So more on meanings and interpretations. Giorgi's approach is more on description, detailed description. Max van Manen's approach is more on understanding the meanings, interpretations that people assign to their lived experiences. So more focus on explicating a phenomena that as it appears, as it shows itself to us as researchers. The third one, and this is very, very important characteristic of van Manen's approach, is he talks about being of a researcher. The being of a researcher, how to be as a researcher, as a phenomenological researcher. What should be my way of being in terms of approaching the phenomenon? How should I do that? And he advocated for this term, which is called attentive practice of thoughtfulness. Attentive practice of thoughtfulness. And this is very, very important. Manen says that as a researcher, when you approach a phenomenon, you need to have certain level of sensitiveness when you are approaching a phenomenon. So thoughtfulness is very, very important in his approach. So when you are planning your study, you are ruminating, you are thinking, you are reflecting, you are thoughtful. So that's what he means when it says being of a researcher. And that is why I feel van Manen's approach is very, very immersive approach. When you decide to use his approach, you have to be into that. You have to really spend a lot of time in reflection, thoughtfulness at all stages of your research process. So being is very, very important. Your engagement in the phenomenon that you are investigating is very, very important. And he talks about attentive practice of thoughtfulness, heeding, minding, caring, attunement. These are the words he used, attunement. Another word he uses is like caring attitude. So when you are approaching a phenomenon that you are interested to explore, have a caring approach to the phenomenon. Have tune yourself with the phenomenon. So as a phenomenological researcher under this tradition, you have to work on yourself as a researcher. So he emphasized a lot on the being of a researcher, attentive practice of being thoughtful as a researcher, being attuned to the phenomenon you are investigating, having a caring attitude to the phenomenon you are investigating. Another characteristic of this approach, his approach is, I would say, influenced both by Husserl approach as well as Husserl approach in terms of explication here, that you approach the phenomenon as it appears, but Heideggerian approach of being in the word. That's Heideggerian approach, where you focus on your being in the word. So if you are interested to know what it means to be a mother, So any phenomenon that you are investigating and you are focusing on understanding the being, what it means to be, then this approach is also very powerful. So the focus is on understanding the being and understanding the context, understanding the interpretation, understanding the meaning. So these are all the focuses of Max von Manen's approach to phenomenology. Another related idea with being of a researcher he talked about is an openness to phenomenon. As a researcher, when I decide to explore a phenomenon, I need to develop, again, as you said previously, like attentive practice of thoughtfulness, and that thoughtfulness include an openness as a researcher. What it means, as a researcher, you are flexible. So let's say, as a researcher, when I started my study, I decided that I'm going to do interviews. Then after one interview, I may think that, okay, it seemed I'm not getting the desired data. So what you could do, okay, from the next interview, I'm going to do maybe 2-part interviews, or I should also do observation of my participants. So as a research design, you have an openness as a researcher. So you have some flexibility in terms of how you want to study the phenomenon, how the phenomenon is showing itself to you, and based on that you can change. So there is flexibility is a strength under phenomenology. So flexibility is pretty allowed. It's a strength. Less structure is another part of when I say openness. Less structure meaning that Manen says that structures are good. They help you to plan, execute the research, but more structures can become a barrier in understanding a phenomenon. So structure is good, but less structure is better, because he focused more on understanding the phenomenon with a very immersive experience, so a little bit less structure. And as I said, it's more responsive, open, and I already said flexible, which is malleable. So overall, Manen's focus is on, as a researcher, you need to develop an openness to the phenomenon that you are investigating. Another thing that Manen suggests is turn to the phenomenon that interests you. And this is very important, that interests you. I said this is very important, particularly for a doctoral student. For a doctoral student, because this is a big project, your dissertation, and you are going to spend almost a year or more than that to collect data, analyze the data. So always, if you choose to do phenomenology, and if you are using von Manen's approach, he suggests that study something that personally interests you. Because if you are not personally interested in that phenomenon, then you may not be able to be as thoughtful. You may not be able to be sensitive to the phenomenon that you are investigating. And also, as a doctoral student, it's a long process of collecting data, engaging in the data, immersing yourself in the data collection, data analysis process. So it requires a lot of time, effort, engagement from your side as a student. And if you are doing a study that not personally, or you don't like that phenomenon as much, then it's going to be a painful experience in some cases. So that's why he suggests that turn to the phenomenon that interests you. So when you are deciding your topic, think about yourself, like why I'm interested in it, why I want to do this. Am I really personally want to do it? Am I really interested in this phenomenon? Do I really want to understand it? If you have a deeper interest in the phenomenon that you are interested in, it is going to it will be easy for you to immerse yourself, to engage with your participant, to engage in the data collection and data analysis process. So that's why he says, turn to the phenomena that interest you, so that you can be more wondering, more contemplative, more questioning. You deeply care about the phenomenon. Another thing that Van Manen suggests, phenomenology is also very suitable for exploring experiences that are common and experiences as we live them, and we don't pay attention and take it for granted in some way. I'd say take it for granted. What it means, take it for granted. In our day-to-day life, we are so much used to living life as it is that we hardly pay attention to objects, people, phenomena around us. So he argues that explore lived experiences of day-to-day life that most of the time we take it for granted. For instance, I didn't do a study, but I was doing a podcast about chairs in our life as an object and how we relate with chairs. And it was so interesting that a chair, an object that we use in our day-to-day life, we hardly pause and sort of reflect and look at the object in its originality rather than with preconceived notion. You can do that. Think about the car that you have been using for the last 10 years. Think about the cars. Think about the stories. Think about the intentionality, the connections you have with the car. And as you think, you will learn a lot of deeper meanings that you have assigned to the experience, your relationship with your car. So that's the idea. He's saying that explore experiences that will, as we live them, and also we don't pay attention or we take it for granted. The third one, he argues about the art of writing and rewriting. This is another key feature of Van Manen's idea, art of writing and rewriting. So I would write it more like describe the phenomenon through your writing, through the art of writing and rewriting. What it means, Manen argues that as a phenomenological researcher, it is very important to engage in self-reflection through the art of writing and rewriting. How it might look in practical, like when you are collecting the data, you can engage in reflection through your researcher diary. Later on, you can write your memos. So what is happening here, you are constantly engaged in writing and rewriting. In phenomenology, particularly under Max Van Manen, he wants you to engage in reflective writing. Writing is not only about describing an event. For him, writing is a creative work which leads to develop more insight about the phenomenon that you are investigating. So as a phenomenologist, as a phenomenological researcher, you must engage in writing. And why writing is important here? Because it helps you to engage with the phenomenon, a deeper engagement, deeper immersiveness with the phenomenon. And that is why he emphasized that as a phenomenological researcher, you need to engage in writing, reflecting, and that will lead to more insightful understanding of the phenomenon that you are trying to understand. Finally, like in descriptive phenomenology, Max Van Manen also use data analysis approach of whole, part, whole analysis. Again, the idea is same. Whole, part, whole analysis is you look at an excerpt, You think about what it means here within that excerpt, and overall, when you look at the excerpt from the context, from the overall context of this interview, what is the meaning? So you're looking at the meaning of an excerpt from the literal, that limited excerpt sense, and also same excerpt in the context of the overall interview. So that we call it whole part, whole analysis. We'll learn more about it later. So in summary, Max van Menen's approach is interpretive approach, hermeneutic approach. What it means that this methodology focuses on the meanings, focuses on the interpretation. So as a researcher, when you are looking at the interviews, when you are talking to your research participant, throughout the process, you are focused on the interpretation. You are focused on what is the meaning that participants are assigning to this particular phenomena or experience. So you are constantly engaged in a reflective process of finding meaning that and meaning that people that which you are studying, that meaning, not my particular personal meaning. So in that way, Max van Menen's approach is more grounded in interpretation of those experiences, lived experiences. That is the main focus. And as I said previously, Max van Menen's approach, the key characteristic is also about your being as a researcher. You must have a contemplative practice, a thoughtfulness, a complete immersiveness, engagement with the overall phenomena throughout the research process. You must have an openness to the phenomenon. It also offers a kind of flexibility in terms of your research design as well. In summary, what I feel van Menen's approach is a little bit more demanding from the researcher in terms of your sensitiveness to the phenomenon, your engagement, your immersive experience with the phenomenon, with a lot of reflection, with a lot of writing, reflective writing, while you are engaged in the process. That's briefly about Max van Menen's approach to phenomenology or hermeneutic phenomenology. In our next video, we are going to talk about another interesting phenomenological research methodology. I'll see you then. Thank you very much. Have a good rest of the day. See you.